YouTube, how's it going? The GOAT House is back. In today's video, I'm going through every single NFL team and talking about their biggest weaknesses in my opinion. I really enjoyed making this video because I actually learned a lot, going through every single team, analyzing them, and, it surprised me on some teams, the amount of weaknesses they had or didn't have. So we're going to find out who had the most weaknesses, who had the least. In a way, this is kind of a video saying why each team can't win the Super Bowl. What's stopping them from taking that next step. So pretty interesting one. A lot of this, what I have going on here, what I learned from this kind of is going to go into my final predictions for this season. So interesting stuff here. Right before we get started, we do have exclusive content available. Go ahead and click that Patreon link at the top of the description. You can find out how you could possibly join our fantasy league, Pick'ems league, and Discord chat. Plenty more to come, more getting added to that as time goes on here. So really appreciate it if you just check it out. Subscriber goal is at 40K by the end of this year. Please help us get to that goal by subscribing. We'll have full NFL coverage, in-season recaps, power rankings, predictions every single week, every game, every week. Can't wait. Click that like button. Check out our Twitter. All that much appreciated. Let's start with the Cardinals. Going to go in alphabetical order by the city. And the Cardinals is a tough one to start with because they have quite a few weaknesses here. Major weaknesses is what I'm going over. Offensive line, pretty obvious one. They actually changed it up quite a bit, so maybe it could be a little better. I worry about them picking up blitzes. I know it's only preseason, but it's already kind of a scary look there. So the offensive line could struggle. A lot of first-year guys, too, so that could explain it. And this is just for this year. It's not going forward or anything for all these teams. It's for the 2019-2020 season. Offensive experience, because a lot of new and young players in there. Kyler Murray, the whole receiver unit besides Larry Fitzgerald is really young. So, I mean, that could hurt them a little bit. We've seen it plenty of times before. The defensive line's pretty rough. They haven't been able to build that pretty well, and they're switching to a 3-4. So I think the four linebackers should be okay. Secondary will be a problem. Even if Patrick Peterson's in there, I think it's still on the weaker side, but he is suspended 6 games, so the secondary can hold them back. And then coaching, kind of a question mark because, we really don't know. It's a first-year coach, so it could hurt them a little bit this year. They're trying to find the identity. Kingsbury's trying to find the identity of the offense, how it's going to be. I don't know if they really expect to, win the Super Bowl this year. Every team should have a goal. A realistic goal. I know the talk is to go out there and win every game, and the goal is to win a Super Bowl. But behind closed doors, realistically, I think it's a year of trial. I guess they're trying to figure out the way to get to that Super Bowl year. So quite a bit of weaknesses that could hold them back. And yeah, I think the main one here is. Well, I was going to say offensive line, but I'm looking at defense. Really, I think they're going to give up some points. They're going to give up some points, and that could be, the biggest weakness. The good thing is it's an offensive league now. We've seen a team like the Chiefs give up a bunch of points and still make their way pretty far and almost went further, even into the Super Bowl. And who knows what will happen then? So I mean, they could shock the world and really just put up a lot of points, and their defense struggles may not matter. But it looks like they have. Quite a bit of big weaknesses here. Let's talk about the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons, the offensive line scare me right now. Last year it was always known as a pretty good offensive line, and last year it took a big, dip down. It went down a little bit, a little surprising. And then this year they did the right thing. They went in the right direction. They had the right idea of kind of rebuilding this offensive line, but they wanted to make it like an instant rebuild because they know that the offense, the team can win now, especially the pieces on offense. You're talking about the quarterback, the running backs, the receivers are great. So they kind of did the right move. I'm not in love with the McGarry pick still, but at the same time, they didn't really go forward. They made the right move to go because they are young offensive linemen, and I think it could even take a step back. And I said that multiple times, previous videos, like way in the past, this offseason. And I've heard they're struggling. They struggle in preseason. You can't take too much away from preseason. But I am worried about this offensive line. I'm worried about it getting after Matt Ryan. He's a great quarterback. And we've seen, especially recently, in an offensive league, offensive lines kind of ruining teams' runs. So it's concerning. Major health. Some teams will have a weakness of health. Some teams will have major health concerns. To me, the Falcons are kind of borderline. But since just a year ago, I know it's a new year, but just a year ago, so many of these guys had health concerns, and that was a reasoning for them not, taking that step into the playoffs, going to the playoffs, which we expected them to. Mainly on the defensive side, and the defense was one of the worst in football, and it's because of health, but at the same time, defensive consistency up here, because even with some of these big-name guys, even healthy, it's still been a problem because, 1 week, Vic Beasley's going off. He's getting a bunch of sacks, and 1 week, you don't even know he exists. Same thing with another guy, Adrian Claiborne. He kind of was the same way in the past. You look at the secondary, a lot of big names in the secondary. 1 week, they look like a really good unit, and 1 week, they're giving up passes left and right. They tend to give up a good amount of passing yards at times during years. So they need to stay consistent. Health kind of goes into that, but they need to stay consistent. I am worried about the offensive line, but it's a good team. It's a good team. They have talent, a lot of talent here and there. These are just things to look out for maybe why they could struggle here and there. The next team is the Ravens. Only 3 for the Ravens as well, just like the Falcons. Offensive experience, it goes with the quarterback. It goes with, and if I did this video last year at this time, receiver would have been up here. But they went out and got some good receivers that I like and that I think really fit too. That's the main thing. They fit perfectly, I think. So that's what takes the receivers off, but it kind of goes into the offensive experience. A lot of young guys, especially with the young quarterback, who I think can play. He didn't really show me any inconsistencies last year, any turnover problems. I know small sample size, but kind of got thrown in a weird situation. The playoff game, I kind of put on the next weakness, which is the play calling. It could be a play calling question mark. Could have thrown a question mark after that because it was really one game where it was really bad, but then they really don't know their own identity, and that's what I worry about. It's a coaching staff that hasn't really been familiar with a Lamar Jackson type offense. So can they nail that? Can they get that down? I thought they did for the most part at the end of the regular season. As soon as they played a very good team, the Chargers, that changed a little bit. So play calling could be a weakness. And pass rush, and the reason I have a question mark at the end of that is because, technically at the outside linebacker position, the pass rush really isn't there. I think they have depth, but it really isn't there in terms of top-tier pass rush, which we know is very, very key in making that big run. But it's a very well-coached defense. It's a very good blitzing defense. So they will get pass rush. It's almost just from that outside linebacker spot where it might be a weakness. So really, as I'm talking about it here, we're going to notice that there's some bigger weaknesses than the others. And the Ravens don't really seem to have too big of weaknesses. It's just about that offense executing this year. The Buffalo Bills next. Offensive experience, same thing. Josh Allen in the second year. He could struggle here and there. Was pretty impressive last year, but nothing crazy. It's just pretty impressive for a young, raw quarterback, I should say. And then you got a lot of young receivers in there. New faces. To offensive experience, I guess doesn't really have to be just youth in general, just a lot of new faces in there, kind of combined with that youth, especially on the offensive line. Offensive line was pretty bad this year. I liked what they did. Get a guy like Cody Ford, he's good, but he's young. These pieces got to come together. Scoring, definitely a team that has struggled to score. I think better this year, but I still think that is what kind of holds them back. Everyone should know that you need a pretty darn good offense, a consistent scoring offense to be good unless your defense is elite, which the Bills can be. That's the good news. And in turnovers, what comes with Josh Allen is potentially turnovers. I think he'll be a good quarterback. It's going to take some time. I'm not saying he's going to have a bad season, but he'll turn the ball over. Even Bills fans can agree. You got to expect it. He's going to turn the ball over. It's not going to be leading the NFL in interceptions, which I guess is possible, but I don't expect it to be. And then pass rush depth. They don't have, like I talked about, I think it's an offensively quarterback plays the most important, but pass rush is one of the most important things. And I think a rotation is key. The teams that have thrived off pass rush and won games because of their pass rush, I think have either elite pass rush players or they have a very good rotation. There's really not much outside of Jerry Hughes. You got a few guys here and there that can play. They can play the game. They're solid bodies to have, but there's not a whole bunch of pass rush, in terms of the actual pass rush position, defensive end, I should say, in their 4-3. And their linebackers could be used in special ways to get after the quarterback. So pass rush in general, they have it, but the depth in the rotation is what's lacking. So not a terrible, terrible weakness there. But they got 4 weaknesses there from the Bills. From the Panthers, more than I expected from the Panthers, but I've been talking about how they they do still have some holes. I did like the way they drafted. QB health, I'm a Cam Newton fan. I've always been a fan of Cam Newton's game. Not a Panthers fan at all, but I think he can be a winner. He is a winner when he's healthy, and he's a game-changing quarterback, playmaking quarterback. Not too many of those guys I can say that for, but they look like a Super Bowl team. And then Cam was hurt, and then it wasn't just Cam though. Other pieces and the holes started showing up. It's a 16 game season. But what scares me about Cam is, he looked way off. Like, he looked like a bad quarterback, which I know he's not, but he looked like a bad quarterback when he was hurt. And you could say, well, he's healthy now, and that's a good point. He can be healthy now. It's kind of another one of those question marks maybe I should have put there, but it scares the hell out of me that there was a lot of talk that he may not be ready for week 1, and that kind of went away. He's going to be ready for week 1, but to me, that the thought that they were thinking that he may not be ready scares me a little bit. I don't know if he's going to be 100%, and if he takes another hit, how will that shoulder be? Receiver, some Panthers fans have been disagreeing with me, but their receiver unit's not good to me. DJ Moore, I like DJ Moore. I liked him as a prospect a lot. He's got potential. He's a good receiver. I don't think he's going to be anything crazy this year. They have some other, I guess you can say they have receiver depth. They have guys that can play, but they just don't have enough pieces that can help them win right now. Curtis Samuel, I'm thinking could be a breakout guy, but you can't have too many expectations for a guy like that. They have sleeper receivers is what I should say, but they just don't have any of those guys that are really going to help them go out and take that next step. DJ Moore's going to help them win games, but how many games can a guy like that help you win? Offensive line consistency, on paper, they look like a pretty good offensive line, but very inconsistent. 1 week they're getting Cam killed, which causes an injury, which, I've seen it all with them. It's just 1 week they look good. For the most part, I don't think they look that good. I think people think about who they have on paper and who's coming back from injury and just automatically assume they're good. I don't know. I don't think they're terrible, but the offensive line needs to stay more consistent. Pass rush, which maybe a couple weeks ago I thought was worse than I actually think it is now. I like how they're using Marquise Haynes. I think he has some potential to step up. Brian Burns, I was very high on, but you can't have crazy expectations out of a rookie. We've seen it take some time for these guys to really get going as pass rushers in the league. And then Mario Addison, inconsistent. I'm not super high on Mario Addison, but he can play. And switching the defense, does he fit that? So I don't know if they have a good amount of pass rush. And secondary is very weak to me. I like Dante Jackson. I like some young pieces like Rashawn Golden, but, is he a rotation? It's nothing crazy. Eric Reed played pretty solid when they had him last year. The secondary is a problem. The pass defense is another way I can describe it. They're going to give up some yards in the air. That's what I'm saying here. So they have some weaknesses, but they have big play potential. If the quarterback, Cam Newton, is healthy, Christian McCaffrey, I love Christian McCaffrey, and the offense line stays consistent, just like that, those weaknesses go away. This team's back to Super Bowl contender. It's a very strange team. I guess you can't go off the first half of the year or the second half of the year last year. First half of the year looked like a Super Bowl team, easily, maybe the best team in football. Second half of the year, terrible, absolutely terrible. You can't say because they ended the year like that, they're going to be bad, or you can't say because Cam's going to be healthy, they're going to be that Super Bowl contender. It's kind of an unknown. It's one of those teams. Next up is the Bears. Only 2 for the Bears, but they're actually pretty key ones. They could hurt them. QB consistency. Trubisky's got to be more accurate with the ball. He's got to be more consistent. It seems like, I guess, good thing. Fourth quarter, he seems to play pretty well. When the Bears have a pretty good lead, he kind of lets teams back in it. I think he was lucky he didn't have more turnovers last year, so he's kind of got to take care of that. He's got to make sure that doesn't happen. And when quarterbacks don't improve, they actually get worse. Thinking about quarterbacks that are labeled bust early in their career, they don't actually get worse in terms of their skill. It's teams figure them out. They're not improving. So that kind of makes them look worse. So my point is Trubisky needs to take a step up. He has to take a step up. And how he played last year, to me, he won games, but it's not going to cut it. And then the defense, for the most part, won games. So Trubisky needs to stay consistent is the main thing. And depth, actually the Bears' depth is, it's pretty weak, I think. Looking at receiver depth, it's actually good. Receiver depth's good. Running back, I can deal with the running back depth. Other than that, it's pretty rough. They were very healthy last year, which is a good sign. They can stay healthy this year, but you never know with these things. The starting offensive line is great, but the depth is horrendous. The pass rush depth is not good at all. Secondary depth is very, very thin. Same thing with the linebackers. So if they start to get hurt in key positions, that could be bad. But there's a reason why they're a good team. They don't have a lot of weaknesses here. The Cincinnati Bengals, on the other hand, have quite a few. They're next here. Offensive line, obviously, that kind of goes with health. I wouldn't say major health because it's kind of just A.J. Green and pieces on the offensive line, but it's kind of borderline. And Andy Dalton, I guess. Yeah, they're kind of borderline, major. I mean, but it's not like health where it's going to stop them from winning the Super Bowl. Some of the teams I have major health under, it's teams that have quite a few big-time injuries or quite a few injuries in general that can stop them from that next step. This is kind of stopping them from winning some games. But offensive line is going to have bad play this year. Due to injuries, retirements, and young players. QB consistency, Andy Dalton's another one of those guys that looks like a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback or close to it, and then just looks god-awful at times. Health, we talked about that. Young defense, I love the way they've been drafting on defense, actually, but it's very young. They gave up a lot of yards in the air and on the ground last year. That can continue, but pass defense was one of the worst in football. I do not have pass defense on here because I think it gets better. I think I like Jesse Bates. I like William Jackson. They have some good guys in the secondary, nothing elite or anything, but I think that improves with the young defense. Could have hiccups here and there. The linebacker unit's pretty terrible. I like the Jermaine Pratt draft pick. Hopefully he gets an opportunity. So a lot of weaknesses, but honestly, I think they're heading in the right direction. It's crazy. People rip the Bengals. I like the way they're drafting, but the most important position in football is quarterback, and Dalton's not a terrible quarterback, but they're going to need to find the quarterback of the future there. And they're going to make sure that the offensive line, they're heading in the right direction too. They got to finish it. They got to complete it. So, again, the weaknesses are for 2019. This is for this year. We're trying to identify what these teams are, what can stop them from, getting to their goal. Like the way they're heading, but for this year, obviously a lot of weaknesses. The Browns, not too many here. They're very young team pretty much everywhere, especially in very important positions. With that, no matter how good they are, they could have the hiccups, the bad moments, where it could cost them at times. And, I love Baker Mayfield, been a Baker Mayfield supporter for a while now. But he's going to have a game where he may turn the ball over a couple times, and that could actually cost him. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. If it doesn't, I guess he's the next elite quarterback. But it could be the difference, especially in a very good division. Offensive tackle consistency. I like their guards. I like their depth at guard, actually, too. But their tackles, I think they're a little inconsistent. 1 week they're playing good, 1 week not so much. Baker's a guy that needs to get outside the pocket too, so the tackles got to really contain. It's all about containment. They've got to be a little more consistent. And the pass rush depth, I almost wanted to say pass rush here, but they have a guy that can legitimately lead the NFL in sacks in Myles Garrett, going to be an elite pass rusher. Other than that, not a whole bunch. I'm not a big Olivier Vernon guy at all. I thought he actually had a terrible season last year, but it is a new year. Could be better with this defense. There's really not much going on with the rotation, I should say, pass rush rotation. Again, Myles Garrett could carry it. Maybe it won't even go noticed. They got Sheldon Richardson on the inside. He's pretty good at interior pressure. So it may go unnoticed. But that's something that I have noticed for them. Not a great rotation. And they can get pass rush from their linebackers, too. Jannard Avery's a guy, for an example. So I think it's something that'll kind of go under the radar. But if they just had rotation, they could take that next step. The Dallas Cowboys, a team that had a little more than I expected here, when I'm analyzing them. Offensive line health, and they have a very good offensive line, but when it's beat up, which it has been, Dak gets pressured a lot. He got sacked a bunch of times last year, and it's not always on him. Sometimes he's not super smart in the pocket. Offensive consistency, and kind of what I said on the Panthers. The Panthers, you cannot take what I say about them. You cannot take the first half of the season to say that they're going to go back to that, or you can't take the second half of the season and they're going to continue to struggle because what they did at the end of the year. You can't do that for the Cowboys either. This kind of goes with offensive consistency and coaching. First half of the year was a disaster. People are ripping the Cowboys left and right. They're ripping the coaching when they can be fired. This team can't get it together. They can't score. The Amari Cooper trade was terrible, and then it kind of worked out. it doesn't mean it's going to continue to work out. They got to stay consistent. It kind of goes with the O-line health too. And it kind of goes with if Zeke's going to be there or not, because Zeke not being there is a huge loss. And he could legitimately sit out. I know they like Tony Pollard, but definitely a huge difference with Zeke. And I think pass rush can struggle. Quinn being out for a little bit early in the season. DeMarcus Lawrence is a very good pass rusher. I know sometimes here and there he kind of disappears a little bit, and then he'll have his monster game. But Dorrance Armstrong's a young guy that I like, but how much is he going to produce this year? Taco Charlton hasn't figured it out. They have depth, but I just don't know if it's enough pass rush. I don't think it's as much as last year. So to me, this is a ginormous consistency with the Cowboys, and that's how it has been. And some fans have just forgotten about that. They've forgotten about what this team is, what they continue to be. They have talent. It's just stay consistent. And the coaching, they're always on the hot seats, and everyone's always calling for a firing in midseason, and all of a sudden they change their minds. So we'll see with the Cowboys. They have talent. The Broncos only had 2, which was, I guess, a surprising team too. Only to come up with 2 for the Denver Broncos. Declining QB, so QB could be a weakness, QB play. In Joe Flacco, I don't think he's going to go out and throw an insane amount of interceptions. One thing that's very underrated about Joe Flacco is he's pretty darn smart in the pocket. He doesn't have mobility, but he's pretty darn smart in the pocket. And now he's kind of with a fit, I guess, what Elway wanted this team to be. I know Elway's not the coach, but he kind of his philosophy on offense and how the way they should throw the ball, the passing game. So Flacco could be good. It's kind of a question mark. He's not going to be outstanding, and that kind of goes into scoring. This team's not going to score a lot of points. They have some weapons on receiver. Could get better, but pretty good weapons. And then Lindsey, as long as he's healthy, he's a pretty good running back. I guess if these guys start to get hurt, maybe the depth on offense, it's another one maybe you can add, but I don't think it's a giant weakness in terms of depth. And then I think they got depth on defense. They've been drafting pretty well, so I couldn't really put depth on here. But what's really holding? I know it's only 2 weaknesses, but they're kind of big, I guess. This could cause them to score little points, which in a scoring league could be a problem, but this defense could be pretty darn good, especially that pass rush. So the Broncos, the only 2 weaknesses, that could be a good sign. Tough division, though. We're going to the Detroit Lions next. The Lions, QB consistency, Stafford did not play good last year. I know people keep coming up with excuses for Stafford. I know he's capable of playing pretty darn good. I guess that's where the excuses come from, because people know they know what he can show. But he there was kind of blame elsewhere with the weapons, and this guy didn't run the right route last year. But I put the blame on Stafford. I think you have a better year this year, but he needs to stay consistent. O-line health, I guess, played a part in that. The weeks where the O-linemen were either inactive to start the game or they came out during the game, it was a disaster. Stafford was getting hit left and right. So the O-line needs to stay healthy. And cornerback, which is crazy because they have one of the best cornerbacks in the game in Darius Slay, but to me, that's all they got. They got Justin Coleman for the slot. He hasn't had too many great years in his career, so it's kind of a question mark. They don't have much at cornerback, and another reason that goes into that is Slay came out of games last year and he missed a game or two, and you see the glaring hole when Slay is out. So if that happens again, it's kind of bad, but this team's gotten better. They got better. They built that defensive lineup. I like the linebacker unit. I think the offense has weapons. I don't really know if there should be any more excuses there. It's just going out and executing. I think you can slap a big consistency question mark for the Lions too, kind of like the Cowboys. The Lions, I feel like every single year. I mean, last year we'll take an example because it was the most recent year. 1 week they look just terrible. You can't take anything away from week 1. I always say that, but just awful against the Jets. Terrible opener. They go out and beat the Patriots. I'm okay. I mean, they beat them up pretty good. They beat up the Packers twice. They beat them up big time. Looked like a really good team. And then when they play, I guess they stuck with the Bears on Thanksgiving. They play the Vikings. They look kind of messy. They couldn't block. And they just have those weeks where I remember during Pick'ems last year, Pick'ems video, I started believing the Lions, and then they kind of let me down when I believed in them. When I didn't believe them, they won. This is back and forth with the Lions, so we'll see. Speaking of the Green Bay Packers, let's talk about the Packers. Health, I almost put major health here because it's at a very important position at the quarterback position and the offense line. The offense line has been beat up over the year. But Rodgers did play last year. Even though he was kind of beat up, he did play. So I couldn't really put major health there. But he needs to stay healthy. I mean, I don't have to tell Packers fans. They'll tell you if Aaron Rodgers is hurt, if he's out, not good. It's not good. Kaiser's got some potential, but they're not going anywhere. And the offensive line needs to stay healthy to protect him so he can stay healthy. Weapons, I like the running backs, actually. I like the running backs. Aaron Jones kind of goes back to healthy. He needs to stay healthy because when he was out for part of the year, and then the receivers was pretty much Devontae Adams only. It's all you hear about. Rodgers doesn't have weapons, and it's because it's true. He doesn't really have a bunch of weapons. Jimmy Graham needs to step up. I guess they got Sternberger, and that's pretty good. I mean, Adams is great, and they have a few receivers that can play, young receivers that can play. Jake Kumaro stepping up, and fun fact, I actually played against him in high school, so it's kind of weird, and it's good to see him coming up. He actually could be the receiver, number 2 receiver. I know Valdez-Scantling, Allison, and Equineme. St. Brown, probably not receiver number 2. But Valdez-Scantling with the speed, I mean, possibly him. But really no big-time weapons. You expect to have big-time weapons besides Adams for Aaron Rodgers. And we hear the complaints during the year, and they really don't do much about it in the offseason, but I guess that's because they focused on their defense. The defense got better. That's what I've been hearing, people saying, this defense is going to be great. It definitely got better. Great job what they did. But there is so many new faces in there where I've seen this so many times where it doesn't work out right away. Next year, different story. This defense should be a top 10 defense next year. I expect it to be easily. But for this year, I could see some chemistry issues. Very young secondary. They're going to have their moments where, they're playmakers. Alexander and Josh Jackson are coming away with a couple picks in a game. That's going to win them a game. But there's going to be weeks where they mess up. I worry about tackling a little bit in the secondary. So the chemistry a little bit. And then play calling kind of a question mark because LaFleur, I thought did a terrible job calling plays in Tennessee. Really, not just a play calling, kind of who he put in the field at times too. It was pretty terrible. Kind of went famous over there in Tennessee for running the ball in second and long and kind of screwing them. Especially to the wrong running back, not Derrick Henry, which is really weird because a big problem with McCarthy last year was they're running it to the wrong running back. They're running it to Jamal Williams too much. I mean, Jamal Williams pretty good short yards guy. I think he's got some upside, but that was kind of a problem over there. And what people agree, they said that a lot. They're running. They should not be splitting Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams this much. It should be Aaron Jones. So it's kind of weird that LaFleur's coming in there. But why do I have that question mark? Well, it's because, now, last year the Titans were one of the most beat-up teams in football. Now you got Packers team who does have a health concern, but right now they're healthy as can be. And they have Aaron Rodgers, who's one of the best quarterbacks of all time, in a better offensive line, slightly better offensive line possibly. So it's a different story, I guess. It's a new year. But new year head coach, especially a play-calling head coach, could be a problem. But overall, I think this team's definitely, it looks like a complete team. Needs some pieces here and there, and they got to grow chemistry on the defense. It's just about, the main thing is staying healthy. They stay healthy, they can get to the playoffs and more. The Texans are next. Offensive line's a pretty obvious one. Don't really need to go in depth about that. Added some pieces. I like Titus Howard for the future. Kind of a raw prospect, though. Depth. I don't like this team's depth. If anybody big gets hurt, the obvious one would be Watson. But the depth, Will Fuller, I guess you can throw health up here too, honestly, because Watson's gotten hurt. That's not too concerning to me. But, Will Fuller and Coutee is already hurt, so that leaves pretty much Hopkins only for the receivers. Any of the defensive players get hurt, there's not too much depth there. There really isn't too much depth. Tackling, I noticed a lot last year. I'm not necessarily think it's going to carry over, but it very well could. Tackling downfield, I should say. Tackling, in the box was okay. Once the ball got to downfield to the secondary, they really struggled. I guess angles and tackling in general. And then Clowney. If they don't have Clowney, you can throw a pass rush in here. It's really J.J. Watt only. Really, you can argue pass rush, from the outside linebacker position too. Just only Clowney. He's not a crazy pass rush, productive guy. He's very good. He's going to get better. He's an elite run stopper. So the Texans have some holes here, actually. Have some holes. It's tough because they have Watson and Hopkins and Fuller, and it's like a high-powered offense, but you need the offensive line to be that high-powered offense, so it's tough. It's a tough one. The Colts are going to be next. Only 2 for the Colts. They're pretty important ones, though. QB health, obviously, what's the deal with Luck? Can we trust him to stay healthy? I was starting to trust him and not call him injury-prone because I thought they kind of played him, took him out to play it safe when he could have played, and then fully healthy last year, 100%, finished the whole season, was excellent. But now, a little scary. Even if he's good to go right now, which people are saying that he is, how easy will it be for him to get hurt again? So it's scary, and it's a weakness because if he's out, they're done. And the Colts fans can admit that. I know Brissett's pretty darn good at backup quarterback, but the competition in the AFC, not easy. And then defensive consistency, kind of going back to what I said about the Patriots and the Panthers and the Cowboys. You cannot take away what they did at the end of the season, what in the beginning of the season, and just say they're going to go back to that. It doesn't matter when they did it. They just got to go out and execute. Kind of going to the defensive consistency. Early last year, they were giving up all kinds of points. As expected, I thought that defense would be bad. They were going to give up some points. And all of a sudden, they turned around, and this defense is shutting teams down, winning games, and it was shocking. And the back of my mind, to me, I'm thinking it could go back to what you expected, what they are supposed to be on paper, really, and give up points. But I don't expect that full time. They need to be consistent. Is it going to be consistent the whole year? I don't think so. Is it going to be split the first half of the year, the second half of the year? Because the offense was pretty much balling the whole year. It definitely got going as the season went on, but it wasn't the offense's fault. They had a losing record and they looked like a bad team early in the year. It was the defense. So can that come back at any time? When will it come back? That's what scares me about them. But the main thing is QB health. If Luck's healthy, they can definitely make a run again. The Jaguars, a team I was starting to feel, but really breaking down this team makes me a little scared. It honestly makes me a little scared. Depth is bad. This is a bad depth team. If big-time players get hurt, they're in trouble. I mean, they got 3 really good pass rushers. So, I mean, they're set there, I guess. But, I mean, if it goes without saying for any team in terms of quarterback, a position like that. So I'm not really talking about that. I'm talking about pretty much anywhere else. There's just no depth to me, in my opinion. There's just no depth. Coaching, kind of a question mark. Marone got them to the AFC Championship game 2 years ago. So he's capable. He's taken some bashing, some ripping, and I guess he's capable of being bad as well. But mainly, DeFilippo scares me. DeFilippo, who they hired the offensive coordinator, this guy's a good coach, especially on the practice field, preparing core. He's a good quarterback coach. And, I'm going to tell you right now, I've ripped a lot of play callers in the past, but this might be the worst play caller I've ever seen, based off last year, a single season, I should say. I know he's on a different team now. I know he has Nick Foles, the guy who he's familiar with, and people say, well, he won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles. He was the quarterback coach. He prepared the quarterback. He's very good at that. Play calling, I hope they don't turn that to him, which I don't think they will, but I've heard there's some signs that they could do that. That scares me. And chemistry, this team, well, for a couple different reasons. Bringing in a new quarterback, new offensive coordinator, but just, they didn't really seem right last year. Fournette not showing up to meetings. Jalen Ramsey seemed kind of selfish by himself. It doesn't seem like, I guess that kind of goes back to coaching too. They don't really have a grasp on this team, I guess, in the locker room to me. I know they're pretty close. The players, I'm not saying they're not close. It just doesn't seem like a team at times last year. And I think that's what, made them take a step down from the year before. Maybe that's just me, and I've heard it said before. So linebacker unit's a disaster to me. Not the most important position, but our unit, I should say. But no Telvin Smith. Miles Jack was disappointing last year. I guess could play better this year. I mean, he's got to carry the load for this team. And then safety, people think their secondary is great because they think Bouye and Ramsey and Bouye, I should say. But the safety group it's not so good. Ronnie Harrison's got a bright future, but he struggled in deep coverage last year. I think the safety unit could be better. It's not the best safety group here. So a little more weaknesses than I expected. Some things actually scare me about this team. And then we got the Chiefs next, only 2. Linebacker unit, not so hot there. Especially changing, defenses, they could struggle. I mean, they struggled last year too. And the secondary, maybe it got a little better, but they're going to give up some. The pass defense will struggle a little bit. It'll struggle a little bit. That's just how it is. But only 2 weaknesses, and the defense struggled last year, and they still went that far with a growing offense too. It's not just an offense that was at their peak. So I mean, this is a legitimate contender, an elite team, maybe the best team in football. Just 2 weaknesses there. Some people want to rip their coaching deep into the playoffs in big games. I don't really have any problem with it. You can point out specific games, specific moments where they struggle. I don't think they're like a choking, I don't think Andy Reid's going to choke on a big game. I don't think that's how it is. So I'm not on that train. The Chargers is next. Offensive line struggled at times last year. I should say consistency, but I am, actually like really breaking this down. I think they could really take another little step down. They have some young talent there. I worry about the offensive line. And then secondary question mark, mainly because Derwin James. You take Derwin James because he's going to be out for a few months because of the recent injury. Unfortunately, has to have surgery. Take Derwin James away. It's rough. They have some big names to like Casey Hayward and Desmond King, but I think you can throw downfield on this team. We've seen the Patriots absolutely expose them. We've seen it from time to time. They can be exposed even though they're talented. But not only all that, Derwin James did so much. He played deep. He played in the box. He's very instinctive. He read plays. He was getting better. He could come back at some point in this game. But secondary could struggle a little bit. But a pretty complete team for the most part if healthy. So only two weaknesses here. The offense, it's a little scary though. The offensive line one's a little scary. Rams next. Offensive line, actually. People may be surprised. Some people may disagree. But I am worried about the offensive line of this team. I think early in the year they may be okay. But they lost Saffold. They lost John Sullivan. Saffold was one of the better guards. Sullivan was one of the better centers last year. They got a lot of young guys stepping up. Whitworth's easily their best offensive lineman. But he's not going to get any better. He could stay the same or he can get worse. And, him being that old, you kind of worry about him a little bit. But he's the least of my worries on this offensive line. So, to me, that's a little scary. And that kind of goes into the next part, QB under pressure. Teams started getting pressure on Goff last year because the offensive line was elite in the first half of the year. And all of a sudden started declining a little bit. And teams figured out how to get pressure, too. They were better at game planning against their offense. And Goff really struggled under pressure, really struggled, and the offense that meant the offense struggled. They couldn't really put up points, and maybe Gurley's health had something to do with that a little bit too. But they couldn't pass the ball. That's the most important part of the game. And then linebackers, which have gotten better, but really what I should say here is pass rush from the linebacker position, because it's not terrible, but Fowler's very inconsistent. Disappears at time. Clay Matthews. He's on the decline. He could help you a little bit here and there. The inside linebackers, I like Corey Littleton. That's about it. But they're gonna get the pass rush from Aaron Donald from the D line, but the pass rush from the linebacker unit could be a little scary. So it's mainly the outside linebacker pass rush productivity is what I'm talking about here. So I guess it's not a super. It's a little scary, the offensive line. It could be alarming, I guess, but it's a good team, well-coached team. We expect them to make a far run. They were just in the Super Bowl last year. Miami Dolphins, QB play, no matter it's Rosen or Fitzpatrick, they will be inconsistent. They'll struggle at times. They can have their good moments. Weapons, they got two solid running backs, nothing crazy, but that's not really the reason they're on this list. I don't like the receiver unit. They have sleeper receivers, but no big-time receiver that's going to change the game. Offensive line, pretty obvious. I think they're going to have one of the worst, maybe the worst offensive line in football. Laremy Tunsil's pretty darn good. That is it. Pass rush, best pass rusher is Charles Harris, who has not lived up to the hype. I think he can have a breakout year, but for that to be your best pass rusher, you got a problem. It might be the worst pass rush in football. And then depth, there's not a whole bunch of depth anywhere, really. They got two quarterbacks that I guess can play, but it's not going to win them games. There's not a whole bunch of depth. Offensive line, defensive line, pass rush, linebackers, secondary, not terrible, not great. So there's some weapons. The glaring one is offensive line and pass rush. It's not even quarterback play to me. I guess the quarterback play is what's holding them back to go to the Super Bowl. But for them to, I guess, whatever their goal is behind closed doors, what they're trying to do, offensive line and pass rush will hurt them and stop them from that. But pretty obvious ones for the Dolphins here. The Vikings is next. Offensive line. Could be a question, I guess, because four new, I guess not new faces, because Elflein started last year, but he's moving to guard. Brian O'Neill started part of the year last year and was a very good offensive lineman for them. Everyone else is new. Everyone else is different. But to me, the main thing is they're changing schemes. It's an easier scheme for the offensive linemen. So the guys that did, struggle, Reef is the only returning starter for the full season in his actual position, I guess you could say. but he could improve with the scheme change. That's a question. We've seen offensive line with scheme change and player additions jump from even the Colts last year from worst to first. Can the Vikings go from worst to first? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But they can get better and can help them take that next step to the playoffs or even further. But I think it'll struggle at times. It's not going to be last year was every play every week, every single play. I don't think it's going to be that bad this year, but I think it'll still struggle. Big games. That's kind of a funny one to have on. Their weakness is big games. And people rip Kirk Cousins for the big games, but let me tell you, it's not Kirk Cousins. The Vikings fans will know. It's not Kirk Cousins, it's the Vikings. I mean, Kirk Cousins has a bad record in big games against good teams. The Redskins never had a good team. It was pretty much Kirk Cousins out there carrying that team with some pieces here and there. I was surprised they were as good as they were, but they couldn't compete with the better teams because they were just playing simple better. The Vikings are favorites in these big games, and they continue to blow them, really the primetime games. They've done it for years. I don't know what it is. I don't know if any Vikings fans remember when Captain Munnerlyn was on the team a few years ago. He used to play corner for the Vikings. He had a quote, something along the lines of the Vikings piss down their legs in big games. He actually said that about the team he was on because it's true. So I think people rip Kirk Cousins a little bit too much for that. It's kind of a combination, just the Vikings in general. And then pass rush depth. They may have, could have maybe the best pass rush duo in football for 4-3 teams in Danielle Hunter and Everson Griffin. After that, Weatherly's a solid depth guy, I suppose, but not crazy rotation. I guess it should say rotation. The rotation isn't great. I know they have some different packages with Anthony Barr getting after the court. So their pass rush is good. They have a more than good. They have a very good pass rush team. I'm just worried about the rotation a little bit. It's not an alarming weakness for them. It's really just the offensive line and executing in big games. The Patriots are next. Patriots have two, surprisingly. Run defense. That interior kind of goes in the defensive line, and you can run on the Patriots. They had their time in the playoffs where they were pretty good, but the teams that game plan right can run against the Patriots. But I think it could take a step back as well. And then pass rush. I know they got Michael Bennett. They lost Trey Flowers. They don't have the greatest pass rush. So it's two weaknesses for them that are actually, they're somewhat alarming, but they'll get the job done because of the Patriots still. Saints are next. Depth. I don't like this team's depth really anywhere. I mean, quarterback depth's pretty solid, I guess. Running back, receiver is not. Offensive line is certainly not great depth-wise. And then all over the defense, I like the Chauncey Gardner-Johnson draft pick. I think he'll be a good rotation guy. Other than that, not too much depth on defense. And then pass defense, even though they got clutch turnovers last year, they give up yards through the air. They will give up yards through the air. That's something they could fix there. But obviously a contender, really good team. Only two negatives on here. The Giants are next. QB play would be one of them, whether it's Eli Manning or Daniel Jones, which kind of goes into turnovers. They will turn the ball over. They also really don't get too many turnovers as well. So that kind of both goes into that. Receiver, obviously the receiver unit is on the weaker side. Golden Tate suspended a little bit too. No Odell Beckham, and some obvious ones here. Offensive line consistency. Really, I like the left side of the offensive line. I don't like the right. Pressure got to Eli a lot last year. I know he didn't play good himself, but some legitimate excuses are the offensive line just not protecting him. Pass rush, I like the potential of Lorenzo Carter. They just don't get enough pressure. Pretty obvious. And then secondary is definitely on the weaker side. I like their defensive line. They will give up some yards through the air, though, for sure. Teams will be able to run it up on the Giants at times, I think. So quite a bit of weaknesses there. The Jets also have some weaknesses for me. Turnovers, Darnold is towards the top of the league in turnovers. I think he has a lot of potential. I think he can grow. I think he'll get better. But I still think he'll turn the ball over. I know he'll turn the ball over still. Maybe not as much as he did, but he will. Offensive experience, a lot of young guys here and there, and a new face in Le'Veon Bell, some new faces on the offensive line, so kind of goes into chemistry possibly. Coaching, Gase hasn't been a good coach. He really hasn't been a good coach. Maybe this is the right fit for him, but he's got to execute. It just hasn't been good. And then pass rush, I like the defense here and there. I think they'll produce some pass rush from the defensive line. And then middle linebackers on blitzes, really, but the pass rush on the outside linebacker position, very, very thin. Just not enough. Secondary, they're very thin in the secondary too. Not much going on there. Mainly the cornerbacks. I should say corners. I like their safeties. So I guess that's misleading. I should say their corners. I like their safeties. Jamal Adams, very good, one of the top tier safeties in football. But they'll give up some yards through the air. And then depth, not a whole bunch of depth throughout this team, really in any position. I'd say not much going. I guess D-line, solid depth. That's about it. So if anybody big goes down, especially now with most likely Blake Cashman starting over Avery Williamson because Avery Williamson's hurt. Anybody else goes down. Not too much in the depth department, but they fired their front office to make sure they get the right pieces for the future, which kind of goes into depth. The Raiders is next. QB consistency, I think Carr can definitely step it up, but it's no surprise he has not been consistent enough. So definitely QB consistency, needs to be consistent. Chemistry, a lot of new faces everywhere. Offense, defense. They drafted a whole bunch of guys. It's just, is it gonna link right away? Is it gonna work together? They could lose some games because they're just not all on the same page. And Antonio Brown kind of goes in that too. Him not being in practice, new face, new team, kind of all goes together there. Pass rush, they definitely got better in the pass rush. I still think it'll be towards the bottom part of the league. The lower part of the league there, I think definitely better though. Definitely in the right direction, but just not enough pass rush. And then pass defense, same thing. They got better there, heading in the right direction. Some good tackling secondary guys, but they'll give up some yards through the air. Next up, we got the Eagles. Major health concern for me for the Eagles. Obviously Carson Wentz going down the last 2 years. And now they don't have Nick Foles to step up for them, and obviously Sudfeld's already hurt too. So if Carson Wentz goes down, it's pretty much over for the Eagles. It's pretty much over. Even if he gets into the playoffs, they're not going to make any crazy run with the backup, no matter who it is. He's got to stay healthy. And I look at the offensive line too, pretty beat up last year. Jason Kelce actually played all games, but he had quite a few different injuries, and I heard he actually thought about retiring at one point because of all the other injuries, but the offensive line needs to stay healthy. And then looking at the secondary was completely beat up. Even pieces on the rest of the defense, Derek Barnett. So they need to stay healthy. Important positions are obviously quarterback and offensive line. Depth, I think they got depth in the secondary, nothing major. Other than that, I'm not in love with this depth. Going back to when they won the Super Bowl, I think they had the best depth in football. No, I know they had the best depth and rotation in football. They don't have that anymore. It's not terrible, but it's not even close to what it was then. And then pass defense. They have quite a few guys in the secondary that can play, but nobody major back there. Malcolm Jenkins is their best piece. He's not the same. He's not what he used to be, but he's still solid. They will give up some yards through the air, though. So not too many weaknesses for the Eagles, but I guess some key ones there. Next, we got the Steelers. Not too many for the Steelers as well. I'm not a huge fan of their depth as well. Not too much. If people get hurt in the important positions, pretty much anywhere, they don't really have the guys that can step up. And turnovers, even though Big Ben, throwing the ball a million times a game and playing pretty well, he can turn the ball over, and it's happened where he's kind of costing them the game with that. So they got to limit the turnovers. And then secondary, I'm not a big fan of their secondary. It's kind of gone. I guess they got away with some stuff last year or in the past because how good their pass rush and their defensive line is. So there could be teams out there that can game plan and expose it. I'm not a huge fan of their secondary. I don't think there's anything that major here for the Steelers, though, that'll hurt them big time, even though, there are 3 up here. But Seattle would be next here. Pass rush to me, they got rid of Frank Clark. Other than Frank Clark, there's really no pass rush. Collier, their rookie, he's only a rookie and he's already hurt as well. Depth for the Seahawks as well. Not a whole bunch of depth. It seems like they're just getting rid of everybody. I think their secondary depth's pretty solid. It's about it. Receiver probably would be up here, but they always have somebody step up. And then DK Metcalf. It depends on if DK Metcalf's healthy or not. If he's in there, it ends up being a pretty solid receiver unit. Then defensive line, the question marks there is because Jaron Reed's actually very solid. He's very solid, but he is suspended for the first 6 games. So without him, it's going to be weak. But when he's in there, it kind of flips it. It's not great, but it's definitely not a weakness. So that's an interesting one. They keep going in a direction of almost a rebuild, but They keep competing still, and they still got one of the top quarterbacks, the best middle linebacker, a good run offense. So I guess only defense here. I guess depth in general for both offense, defense, but mainly just defense here for the Seahawks. The Niners is next major health. The team that maybe was beat up the most last year, especially at the quarterback position, the running back, multiple running backs beat up. All over the place on the offensive line, the defense, everywhere. And there's already guys hurt too. Nick Bosa's already hurt, nothing major. They already got McKinnon's already hurt. Again, I guess nothing major. But it's a team I worry about. And QB consistency, Garoppolo to me hasn't really been good. He hasn't really proven anything to me yet. I know he's capable of being better or being good. He just hasn't. He's got to prove it. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to be consistent. And then the safety position's very weak to me. It's very weak. They already had an injury there. I like their corners, but safety position definitely on the weaker side. So it's just health. It's just stay healthy for the most part. Quarterback be a little more consistent when healthy. That's really it for the Niners. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they got a whole bunch. Here. Turnovers. No surprise there. Winston, he's inconsistent. He turns the ball over quite a bit. He has his moments where he's really good, but then he has his moments where he's really bad. Running back, probably have the worst running. Whoever their starter may be, maybe it's Peyton Barber, maybe it's Ronald Jones. They probably have the worst starter and just unit in general in the league, and that kind of helps team know they're going to pass the ball, and that helps teams get turnovers on them. Offensive line consistency. On paper, it looks like a good offensive line. They struggled a lot last year. 1 week they're really good. 1 week they're not so good. Pressure gets on Winston. Could be the reason for the turnovers as well. Offensive depth. Lost a few receivers, so the depth is nowhere near what it used to be. It's actually on the weaker side now, even though they have two pretty darn good ones. They have a very good duo there. Just not much depth going pretty much anywhere. No more Fitzpatrick backing up Winston either. And then pass rush. No Jason Pierre-Paul for a while, maybe the whole season. They switched their defense. I think their pass rush will really come from their inside linebackers and Levante David and Devin White, the rookie. From the outside, really nothing there at all. Definitely at the bottom part of the league. And then secondary, I like the way they drafted. They have some young pieces, but it's not going to work, just like that. You can't just flip a switch and it works instantly. They'll be set for the future at the cornerback position, but the secondary will give up a ton of yards like they did last year. So a lot of weaknesses for the Bucs. They do have some big-time playmakers here and there. I guess that can help them win games, but they got to be crazy good impacts for them. Tennessee Titans, only two for the Tennessee Titans. Major health. Mariota consistently getting hurt at this point. He needs to stay healthy. I think when he's 100%, he's a good quarterback. And then, you got injuries everywhere. Delaney Walker was hurt last year. Pieces of the offensive line were out. Pieces of Jarrell Casey missed some games. And speaking of Jarrell Casey, a dominant defensive lineman, really carries that defensive line. If you take him away, there's a very, besides him, because it's more than one person on a defensive line, it's very weak. There's a reason they drafted a hurt Jeffrey Simmons in the first rounds, because they desperately need a defensive line. He may be back at some point during the season. I've heard he can come back halfway, or just they may save him, not come back at all. So him coming back and being what he's expected to be, a pro-ready and very good defensive lineman, it's going to scratch the defensive line right off of this, but the big chunk of the season he won't be there, so it's a weakness. So really, only two weaknesses for the Tennessee Titans. I think it's a very complete team. It's just major health. If they stay healthy, they'll be a very good team. But it's a major concern because it consistently happens, it seems like. And the Redskins are this is a long video. Final team. I did not expect this to be this long. I really enjoyed this one though. I think it's very informing. It helped myself. But the Redskins, QB kind of question mark. I think Keenum can play. He's not going to, take you. He just took the Vikings, I guess, the team that didn't make the playoffs without him, to the NFC Championship game. So who knows if it's Keenum? I don't know. Colt McCoy's not bad. Dwayne Haskins will struggle early, but he's not going to be terrible. It's not going to really bring you anywhere, I don't think. Offensive line health, and I guess Trent Williams, you could put question mark next to that. Is he going to be there? But he's a health concern as well. Offense line's really good on paper, just beat up, and that kind of forces QBs to play inconsistent for them. Receiver, they got better because of the way they drafted it. It's still not a great unit for this year. It's still a weakness, but it's heading in the right direction. And then pass defense, they have some pieces there. Landon Collins is more of that tackling guy in the middle of the field. He doesn't take the best angles, I guess, when the ball's in the air downfield or when he's going to the sideline. But he makes them better. But it's nothing crazy where one man's going to change everything. Norman hasn't been the same. I mean, Fabian Moreau could step up. Stroman could step up. It's nothing crazy. They will continue to give up some yards there, but it's not, I guess it's not crazy terrible is what I'm getting at. So there's the weaknesses for all 32 teams. This video went forever, but it was a good one. I think this is a very good video, a good learning experience for all of us, including myself. It's definitely a lot of this is going to play a very big role, a very big part of who I predict to go to the playoffs. I'm not saying it's going to be 100% accurate, I think, but yeah, if we did this last year, I think we would have identified the right teams. I think if we do it on the teams from last year, the teams that are on top were on top because they had the least amount of weaknesses or alarm. I guess it's not really about the number of weaknesses. It's about the number of alarming weaknesses, like the ones that are significant. So I'm going to stop talking now. Please subscribe. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching the video. Goodbye.